21 years after I finished the initial designs in early 1993, my beautiful alternate Starship Enterprise A design has finally taken birth as a 3D CG model as of the start of 2014. As many people out there have already expressed to me online, they are totally amazed that no one out there never previously jumped at the opportunity to turn such an excellent Enterprise design into a CG model earlier on in the piece. As long as it has been, I was never overly concerned about this. They say that patience is a virtue, and the time for this finally arrived for me in January of this year, when American engineer and CG designer Greg Blass contacted me with his very kind and generous offer after watching my original Enterprise design portfolio on YouTube. Once communication was set between us, I sent my newly updated designs to Greg for him to begin the 3D modelling process. To start with, Greg began building from the front of the ship with the saucer section. At this early stage, I also provided him with a few freehand perspective drawings of various parts of the ship that were difficult to grasp hidden from the elevations alone. The trickiest part of the saucer section was the back center part of the ship here, mainly the impulse engines, which had even trickier angles to get just right. After about 3 weeks into January, and Greg had completed the basic structure of the starship, minus the nacelles. Always worried how the nacelle pylons would look in perspective with their double angle feature, they actually surpassed my initial worries immensely, looking greatly impressive at various angles. Even at this early stage of building, it was already most very clear that the finished look of my design was going to look extremely beautiful from all viewed angles of perspective. Unfortunately, however, Greg's short time devoted to this encouraging start was cut short when he had to return to work towards the beginning of February. Very fortunately, as fate and destiny had in mind, around this time I received another kind and generous online offer from Lisbon's CG designer Nuno Guerreiro, who also offered to have a go at turning my A design into a 3D model. After doing a bit of online homework on Nuno's work and team, I was totally blown away by their incredible detailed and realistic work and animation. So I very warmly welcomed him to take up the flame where Greg left off. Starting from scratch again, I sent further updates of my design to Nuno, along with other details needed for accuracy and clarification. After only 3 or 4 days into the project, and Nuno had already completed very beautiful work of the starship, starting at the back of the ship with the nacelles, and sending me a fabulous clip of his early work progression of the saucer section and body. And here is the latest brilliant work Nuno has done on her so far. So watch this space here, people, and Hollywood, and stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 when we continue the journey of the unfolding process of bringing my excellent Enterprise A to life. Getting back to my original YouTube Enterprise portfolio doco, with now over 20,000 hits and rising rapidly, I've received many responses over time since I posted it up. As accepting of how beautiful and streamlined my design was to the majority out there, I also copped the negative stuff, as you always do. Some people even accused my design of looking like a kit bash, but as I said in my original film, I always wanted my Enterprise to be a cross between the Probot Enterprise refit and Excelsior, waiting as the new Enterprise A for Kirk and crew on their return home from Time Warp in Star Trek IV. With this, considering how smooth and streamlined her lines flowed over and along her body, my design is very much a beautiful, seamless morph between refit and Excelsior, honouring Trek's starship tradition in its fullest grace and majesty. I also received an endless barrage of corrections about my misunderstanding about warp engineering, which I initially thought was a thrust propulsion system. So thank you to everyone out there who gave me the most detailed and accurate corrective descriptions of warp engineering on this. And thanks also to the many posts telling me I spelt original Enterprise designer Matt Jeffries' surname incorrectly at the very start of the dedication. As you will all notice in the start of this one, folks, I dedicate him properly here with this one. Many Generation fans also blasted me for totally writing off the Enterprise D design at the start of the doco as well, which I still stand by my good architectural word today as being the ugliest Enterprise design there and then. As much as Andrew Probert was commissioned to make the Enterprise with a more organic look this time, considering how badly disproportionate she ended up looking, it was very clear to me that as organic as the Enterprise looked, she definitely had no true natural Fibonacci aesthetics to her disproportionate ugliness whatsoever. And taking natural aesthetics into account here, any architectural master will immediately see in any designed shape if it works well or not, simply by its aesthetic degree to match natural beauty and Fibonacci proportions. So do you see, people? Architectural aesthetic design is not merely a subjective preference. No. In order for a design to be successful and work well, it must follow and complement key proportions to nature in general, as well as good personal taste added in detail over this foundation. And to be honest here, the D design was not overly accepted by the fans at the start either. It was only after time that the design started to grow on fans and become somewhat acceptable, unavoidably so, as the Enterprise. This, however, is not the case with my design. My design works straight up right from the start. And not only do I say so, but I have the hits and dominating likes to back me up here. Interestingly so about this, I just recently received a Google message from Andrew Probert, and after reading his brief, unsupportive comments, I politely replied to him to start taking notes. Just to let him and everyone know here, as a lover of the Enterprise design, here are my essential design principles for pulling off a truly beautiful and excellent starship design. The ship must always have the three main components of saucer, body and twin nacelles. Never make the nacelles shorter than the length of the saucer, as you will compromise the overall balance of the starship by doing so. And as an absolute canon law for me is you never drop the nacelles below the rim of the saucer. For me, the starships of Starfleet have 13 classes in each generation of any time, the complement of 11 vessels in each class. And every class is designed around these key design principles without exception. Also in my new Trek timeline for the Kirk era, Space Dock of Star Trek III has an orbital dry dock that rings central around her, of a circumference enough to station all of Starfleet in total. So that's 143 starships in all, according to my Trek canon. I also received an online comment recently about my alternate design to power Enterprise by natural starlight being drawn into a photon particle star drive intake in replacement of where the deflector dish is positioned. To quote his words, "Bugger all light in deep space." But to him I say, you are only thinking nowadays in terms of current technology. With my 23rd century technology, even the minutest of light received by my star drive intake is magnified 1,000-fold, even before it is distributed to the ship's units. And also too, this new star drive system can also operate at warp speeds. The warp bubble does not conflict with the engine receiving light into it when at warp. As many who do not know this, but I sent a DVD presentation of my original YouTube portfolio to Enterprise E designer John Eves years before it went live global. This was back in late 2006 when Paramount released the news of going to make a new Star Trek prequel saga. As some people have already commented online, JJ also followed in suit to what I said back then, that red is a big no-no on the main feature of the ship, as I steered well clear of the red glowing bussard collectors and more in tradition with the earlier film's Enterprise, just as JJ did with the glowing blue bussard fans for the nacelle heads. One thing that is very much an extreme exaggeration in the opposite direction to my design is how close side by side the nacelles are on JJ's Enterprise, and how close to the saucer they are also, the complete opposite to my far better and well-proportioned design. Also very interestingly, at around the time of the new millennium, I also scripted a new Star Trek trilogy for the Kirk era immediately following Star Trek IV, specifically for my new Enterprise A. The trilogy synopsis of this, along with my designs, I sent to Major Roddenberry around this time. Mrs. Roddenberry was kind enough to reply, and she informed me that my designs were added to the archives. So in some indirect way, Paramount was already aware of my designs even as far back as then. As my family and friends know via my very good human rights advocacy works, as much as I love the medium of film, I've come to properly mature in life, both ethically and humanely, to rightly see Hollywood for what it actually is. Hollywood is the most greediest and most selfish location on the planet. They have enough money to live 1,000 lifetimes over and to save the world 10 times over. They only keep to their own favoured closed circles, and they do not allow the mainstream public into those favoured circles either, even when it is very clear that there are many creative designers out there like myself that can far greater beat them at their own game. As much as I would never work in such a lavish, indulgent, greedy land, but even if I was ever remotely approached by Hollywood to acquire my Enterprise A design here, I would make them pay through the nose for it, and I would charge them a multi-million-dollar fortune, which every last cent of that Hollywood greed money would be turned into true goodness and just value by donating it all to my 3 favourite charities. Sorry to tell you, JJ, but my far superior design is light years ahead of your stuff and creative capacity. Never would I personally associate my good mystic self with you or the greed of Hollywood. So take note here, JJ Abrams, and just watch good old mystic Spenny P put you and Hollywood to complete and utter shame. Finally here, on a more gentler and inspiring closing note, I want to say how very shocked and surprised I was in the early years of designing my Enterprise A, that when I finished the initial designs way back in 1993, at this time I learned of the exact date of Gene Roddenberry's passing earlier in 1991, which was very appropriately so United Nations Day, October 24, my birthday. So even in some sentimental, destined way, I share a continuing generation link with Star Trek's creator. And so I will finish this part 1 of my new Enterprise presentation here, as I started by honouring and dedicating this creative goodness to Mr. Gene Roddenberry and his production brother, Mr. Matt Jeffries. I just wish they were both still around to see her here now. As truly beautiful and excellent as she is, my Enterprise A definitely has a design that will see her into the construction times of the 23rd century and beyond. She is definitely a design of the future. I wish I was there.
Peace.